Now, from the space above us to the air we breathe, governments must act now in order to keep climate change costs at manageable levels. That's a message from the United Nations in a new report released today. The report found with very high confidence that in urban areas, climate change will increase the risk of storms, flooding, drought and many other environmental effects that would lead to major economic shocks and increase the risk of violent conflicts. So what does this mean for the UAE? Well, joining us in the studio is Alice Cowman, the CEO of the Clean Energy Business Council. Alice, thanks for joining us this evening.
No problem. Hi, Katie.
So, as we just heard, the UN says governments need to act now, particularly when it comes to the economic side of things. Is that the biggest barrier to change?
Well, the good news is that it's not cost. It's not about the economics anymore. We just need to change where we're putting our money. So in energy right now, I think they've estimated $600 billion worth of subsidies for fossil fuels, as against $90 billion of subsidies for clean energy. So we need to change that balance if we're going to move to a low carbon future. Additionally, we spend about $1.6 trillion in the energy sector as a whole. We spend over half of that on fossil fuels. We need to change that balance. So the money's out there, we just need to change where we're putting it.
Okay, so you're saying it's about balance, and you're saying those subsidies should be removed. Is it about removing them? Is it about phasing them out? What do you think?
Well, the good news, and there's often not good news when you're talking about climate change, but the good news is right now, purely on the economics, often the best option is the low carbon energy option. So all the developers that I work with are asking for is a level playing field. They're not asking for subsidies, they're just asking to compete on a fair playing field against fossil fuel generation.
I mean, often that clean energy, those projects still can be expensive, though they are becoming more affordable. Let's talk about the idea of a Green Sukuk. There's a lot of interest that maybe something like this would help fund some of the clean energy projects in this region, but you say there's simply not enough of these projects yet.
Well, as I said, the capital is out there. It's just about moving the capital to somewhere else. So at Sukuk, if we're going to issue it, is about $300 to $400 billion of a size. Right now, clean energy has been slow to take off within the GCC region, but there's been ambitious targets set, particularly for energy efficiency. For example, Dubai is looking to retrofit 30,000 buildings between now and 2030. That's going to require a lot of capital, and the capital markets, such as the Sukuk market, is a good way to access low capital for those projects.
So if it's not about finance, then what is the biggest barrier to change in this part of the world?
Well, I often say there's three things that need to happen to make a project work. There's technology, finance and policy. The good news is the technology is already mature in the case of solar, and as I said, on a level playing field can compete. The finance is out there, we just need to redirect it. So it's the third angle, which is policy. And it's not just about policy for the short term, so you can't support a clean energy project now. You have to say, over the next 15 years, this is the way we're going, which lowers the risk for investors over the long term. And policy is also about people. We need to be sure that people want it. Policymakers follow what the people want. We can't take for granted when we turn on our light switch that we're just going to have energy. We have to think about where that energy comes from, and we have to say that we want it to come from low carbon sources.
Well, let's hope we do see those changes, and quickly. Alice, thanks for coming in this evening. Appreciate your time.
The UAE might be a major oil exporter, but it has plans to diversify its energy mix, relying on natural gas, solar and nuclear to power the country. Experts say cleaner fossil fuels like natural gas can provide a backup to solar energy projects if production drops on a cloudy day.
Natural gas is a very, very good complement to renewables. What you see is that natural gas generation technologies, whether it's gas turbines or gas engines, are very flexible. Compared to a nuclear power plant or a coal-fired power plant, which need a very, very long time to ramp up or down, these gas technologies can follow very quickly the changes that you sometimes see in renewables when you have a cloud passing, for example, a solar plant.
A number of major oil and gas companies are also incorporating fossil fuel and renewable energy together in the region.
Actually, Shell started to use renewables in our own operations. We need energy to heat reservoirs with heavy oil to improve productivity. So we have right now in Oman, for the first time, a solar unit which is delivering steam, a very high temperature, 300 degrees, which is injected in the reservoir, and it's saving a lot of gas or crude to create the same amount of energy.
The price of solar photovoltaic systems has dropped by more than 50% in the last 5 years alone, which means it's now cheaper to generate our electricity from solar energy than from traditional diesel. Experts say the financials make sense. We must act now.
The good news about solar is that it's no longer about subsidy, it's no longer, let's say, about the requiring, let's say, premium. It's just competing with the current costs of fossil fuels, and in particular, say, even nuclear, I just mentioned before. It's about, let's say, allowing, let's say, to compete on a playing field with the different, let's say, generations.
But some experts feel that drastic action is still needed, that in order to really ramp up the focus on renewables, we must look at a global carbon tax and remove energy subsidies altogether.
What we need is a carbon tax, so at least we create a level field for competing between all the energies. And subsidies on one hand, a lot of economies is taking actually big, sometimes up to 20% of the GDP of given countries at the expense of education and others. But the problem is you don't see efficiency. And personally, I believe we have a say, a barrel saved is better than a barrel explored. So by removing the subsidies, you will force efficiency.
The UAE is sending a clear message that a clean, green future is possible, that it can be cost-effective and have dramatic benefits for the entire nation. But to complete this transformation, it needs a collective, long-term commitment of the entire country. Katie Fielder, Emirates News.